My ex-MIL sent her church friends to harass my daughters and I. I have now exposed her family to her church community, and she's getting shamed and shunned at church. My 46-year-old daughters, 17 and 15, have a strained relationship with my ex-husband's parents, 78-year-old man and 80-year-old woman. My ex passed away in an accident last year, and we've had some major family drama since, due to his cheating and him leaving 2 boys born with his affair partner orphaned. She also died. Part of the drama has been my ex-in-laws trying to get custody of my daughters, and them also trying to live with us. The first one, we're going to court over. The second one will never happen. Where we live, there's a weekend market with fresh produce, eggs, meats, and other products straight from farmers. This week was extra special since it was my youngest daughter's birthday. Since her party is later in the month, I decided to give her a budget and set her loose on the market to get whatever she wanted, mostly chocolate and sweets. After an hour, I did start getting worried, and just before I called her, she called me. She was crying, saying some weird people have cornered her. I ran to her with my oldest daughter to find 6 older women berating my 15-year-old for being unchristian, for refusing to spend time with her paternal grandparents, or for wanting to be a good big sister to her poor orphaned baby brothers. My daughters are the ones that found out about my ex cheating and the babies, so they aren't fond of the kids. It's trauma, and they are working with a therapist. I got between the group and my daughter, telling my eldest to go pay for the stuff her sister had picked out and to go to the car. Then I turned to the women, some who I knew from when we went to my ex-in-law's church, and ripped them a new one. They told me I was worse for refusing to obey my ex-in-laws like a good Christian wife. Eventually the screaming became too loud, and we were all asked to leave the market. I met with my girls in the car, the women following me like a group of vultures. I managed to get in the car and drove away. After my girls went to bed, I got online to talk to another member of that church that I'm on good terms with. I told him about what happened, and after he apologized, he told me what was going on. My ex-mother-in-law had posted this massive story in the church's Facebook group about how horrible my daughters and I are, how we are leaving them homeless and penniless, and how my daughters don't even talk to them. She also accused us of being the reason she lost her grandsons. The boys are now living with distant relatives of my ex-husband. Basically, it was a sob story worthy of a Hallmark movie. And of course, they were getting all the love and support from the more extremist members of their church. The reality was that they had inherited my ex's personal bank account and his life insurance. So they weren't homeless or penniless at all. But the church members didn't know that. This church and its members are a bit annoying, especially with certain topics, but they have one small saving grace. They are incredibly strict about cheating. It's a big no-no, whether from a husband or a wife equally. Now, how did she get around blaming me about affair children without exposing the cheating? She claimed the other woman was our surrogate, since I was unable to have more children. Then she said I didn't want the babies because they were boys, which is absolutely disgusting to be accused of. I decided it was time to clean up this mess, and since I was mid-divorce when my ex died, I had all the evidence needed. Since the divorce wasn't completed, I didn't have any legal ramifications for releasing all the evidence. I was off the next day and went to a print shop to get copies of all the delightful pictures of my ex cheating. His text conversations with his affair partner, the ones with his parents confessing to his cheating and getting support from them, my ex-in-laws harassing me about the divorce, and my coup de grace, all the emails and text messages of them bullying my daughters about their baby brothers. In one of them, they called my daughters bastards and told them it was their fault their father died, since they told me about the affair and I began the divorce. This message was literally sent 2 days after the funeral. I made enough copies for everyone and drove to the church. Sunday service had just ended and people were milling around outside. I started handing out the evidence packets to everyone I could find. The reactions were immediate. People started looking through the papers, their faces changing as they read the text messages and saw the photos. The conversations around me got quieter, then stopped altogether. My ex-mother-in-law came out of the church and saw me standing there with a stack of papers. Her face went white. She tried to rush over, but several church members intercepted her, holding up the evidence I'd just given them. I could hear fragments of heated conversations. Words like adultery and lies and "those poor girls" carried across the parking lot. The pastor emerged and someone immediately handed him a packet. He flipped through it methodically, his expression growing darker with each page. When he reached the messages calling my daughters bastards and blaming them for their father's death, he looked up and stared directly at my ex-in-laws. I didn't stick around for the confrontation. I'd done what I came to do. I got back in my car and drove home, leaving behind a parking lot full of church members reading the truth about the family they'd been supporting. Within hours, my phone started buzzing with messages from church members apologizing. They were horrified by what had happened at the market, and mortified that they'd been manipulated into harassing children. Several mentioned they'd confronted my ex-mother-in-law directly after I left. The woman I'd spoken to before called me that evening. She told me the fallout was swift and brutal. The pastor had called an emergency meeting with my ex-in-laws and several church elders. They'd been formally reprimanded for bearing false witness and manipulating the congregation. She'd painted herself as the grieving grandmother being cruelly separated from her family, but the evidence showed her calling grieving teenage girls bastards and blaming them for their father's death. No amount of church sympathy could overcome that level of cruelty toward children. The woman who had orchestrated a campaign of harassment against my daughters was now sitting alone in church pews, abandoned by the very community she'd tried to turn against us. I cheated on my girlfriend and received the worst karma for it. I emotionally cheated for about 4 months with a coworker, sending texts every night back and forth with her. I also cheated with another girl I knew and had sex a few times. I grew tired of my girlfriend over the past year and was avoidant on breaking up because I felt she was too safe. She found out about the coworker the day before my birthday when she went through my phone. I've never heard someone cry like that. Not the dramatic sobbing from movies. This was deeper, guttural, like something inside her was actually breaking. She kept asking why, over and over, but not in a way that expected answers. Just a repeated question thrown into the void. Her hands were shaking as she scrolled through months of betrayal. She'd trusted me completely, and I'd used that trust to hide an entire relationship. The birthday party happened anyway. She'd already paid the deposit for the venue, already invited everyone we knew. But word travels fast in tight friend groups. By the time I arrived at my own party, half the expected guests had found excuses not to come. The ones who did show up avoided eye contact. Conversation stopped when I approached groups. Everyone saw me as Satan himself, which I don't blame them for. The girl I'd been having the physical affair with came to the party. While my life was falling apart, she saw an opportunity. She broke up with her boyfriend that same day to be with me. In the middle of losing everything, having someone choose me felt intoxicating. I rode the high and went with it. We left the party together, while my ex's friends stayed behind to comfort her. The whirlwind romance that followed felt like a movie. Spontaneous road trips to cities 3 hours away, making out in restaurant bathrooms, staying up until sunrise, talking about our dreams and fears. She was impulsive and unpredictable in ways that made every day feel like an adventure. For the first few weeks, I convinced myself I'd made the right choice. This was what passion was supposed to feel like. Things finally simmered down after about a month. The constant excitement became exhausting. The spontaneous trips started feeling expensive and pointless. The late-night conversations began revealing things I wished I hadn't learned. She'd mentioned getting sick at work and needing to take breaks every few hours. She'd disappear for long stretches without explanation, then come back, acting jittery and strange. I found out she was addicted to a gas station drug called 7-OH, a synthetic compound sold legally, but designed to mimic harder substances. She'd buy packages of powder and capsules, taking them throughout the day to function. What I'd mistaken for spontaneity was actually the erratic behavior of someone managing an addiction. The energy I found so attractive came from chemical highs and crashes. She started asking me for money every day. $20 for gas that somehow never made it to her tank. $50 for groceries that never appeared in her apartment. $100 emergencies that happened twice a week. I was the only person she had left. Her family had stopped taking her calls months earlier. Her friends had distanced themselves as her addiction worsened. She clung to me like a life raft. And I realized I was drowning too. I'd also become one of the few people she had at this point. My old friend group had completely cut me off. Social media became a minefield of happy photos I wasn't included in. Parties I wasn't invited to. Inside jokes I was no longer part of. The isolation made ending things with her feel impossible. Being with an addict was better than being completely alone. Many nights, I'd lay in bed next to her as she tossed and turned from withdrawals. Her body would shake and sweat as the drugs left her system. She'd get up every hour to drink water or pace around the room. I'd lay there on my phone, scrolling through stories and updates of all my friends with my ex, having the time of their lives. Beach trips I should have been on. Dinners at restaurants we used to visit together. My ex looked genuinely happy in ways I hadn't seen in months before the breakup. Getting blocked and unfollowed happened gradually. One by one, mutual friends chose sides. My ex never asked them to cut me off. The loyalty ran deep. They'd watched her heart break. They'd seen her rebuild herself afterward. They'd witnessed me throw away something good for something selfish. The moral choice was obvious. I finally broke up with the addicted girl when I snapped out of the mania and realized what my life had become. The moment of clarity hit during another 3 a.m. withdrawal episode. She was crying and begging for money for more drugs. I was calculating how much I'd already spent enabling her habit. This wasn't love. This wasn't even companionship. This was two people using each other to avoid facing their real problems. Breaking up with her meant facing the most alone I'd ever felt. The silence in my apartment was deafening. No good morning texts from anyone. No plans for weekends. No emergency contacts who would actually answer. I traded a loving relationship and a solid friend group for a few months of excitement, and now I had nothing to show for it, except debt and regret. I started going on dating app dates a few nights a week, having meaningless encounters with strangers. The physical connection felt hollow compared to what I'd lost. These women didn't know my history or my interests. They were filling time the same way I was. The sex felt mechanical, like going through motions that used to mean something. I miss my old life with an intensity that surprises me. The predictable movie nights I complained about. The grocery list texts that annoyed me. The safety and stability I threw away because it felt boring. My ex's reliability wasn't a weakness. It was a gift I was too immature to appreciate. Everyone sees me as a monster, and I understand why. I betrayed someone who trusted me completely. I chose temporary excitement over lasting commitment. I hurt someone who loved me because I was too cowardly to end things honestly. The consequences feel proportional to the damage I caused. I regret everything fully and wish I could go back so desperately it physically hurts. But regret doesn't undo betrayal. Wishing doesn't rebuild trust. I destroyed something beautiful because I thought I deserved more, and now I'm left with nothing except the knowledge that I had everything and chose to throw it away. My wife and I decided not to know if we were having a boy or a girl ahead of time, and we weren't prepared for how upset it would make people. We weren't prepared for people to be so upset, angry with us over this. We have been accused of not caring about our baby. People have been telling us they are hurt, because not telling them means we don't trust them. I've been accused of forcing my wife into this, even though she wants it to be a surprise as much as I do. My mom and dad got upset. My wife's sister berated her. My brother and my sisters said nothing. My wife and I decided not to know if we were having a boy or a girl ahead of time, and we weren't prepared for how upset it would make people. We have been accused of not caring about our baby. People have been telling us they are hurt because not telling them means we don't trust them. I've been accused of forcing my wife into this, even though she wants it to be a surprise as much as I do. My mom and dad got upset. My wife's sister berated her. My brother and my sister said I'm hurting them and mom and dad because I'm hiding this, and that I should tell people because it's what they did when they had my nieces and nephews. My wife's parents and her friends aren't happy with us. The only ones who aren't upset are my wife's nan and some of my friends. My wife is almost 23 weeks pregnant. When she found out she was pregnant, we decided that we didn't want to know ahead of time. This is our first, and we had no idea it would be upsetting to anyone. 3 weeks ago, we went for a scan. The moment came when they asked if we wanted to know if we're having a boy or a girl. We declined. None of the staff at the clinic batted an eye. It was completely normal to them. After the scan, we did tell people it went well and the baby is healthy. But apparently, it was also expected that we would tell people what we are having when we messaged them about how the appointment went. Or, in the case of some of our family members, when we told them about the appointment in person. The reaction started immediately. First it was confusion, then disappointment, then anger. People weren't just asking once and dropping it. They kept pushing. They kept demanding to know why we were keeping this from them. My mother pulled me aside and said she felt hurt. She said when my siblings had their babies, they shared everything. She said it felt like we were shutting her out of this important moment. My father was quieter about it, but I could see the disappointment in his face every time the baby came up in conversation. He'd get this look, like we were being deliberately difficult. My wife's sister was the worst. She actually berated my wife over the phone, told her she was being selfish, said that everyone in the family was excited, and we were ruining that excitement by keeping secrets. She accused us of thinking we were better than everyone else. My wife came off that phone call in tears. My brother called me later that same week. He said I was hurting our parents. He said they were confused and felt like I didn't trust them with this information. He brought up how open he and my sisters had been when they were expecting. He said they shared everything with the family, and that's how it should be. He made it sound like we were breaking some unspoken family rule. My sisters joined in too. They said I was being unfair to Mom and Dad. They said our parents deserve to know because they're going to be grandparents. One of my sisters actually said I was being cruel for wanting to wait to find out the gender of our own baby. My wife's parents weren't shouting or calling names, but their disappointment was obvious. Her mother kept making comments about how she couldn't plan properly for the baby shower without knowing. Her father kept asking if we were sure about this decision. Like we hadn't thought it through. Like we were being impulsive children. Her friends weren't much better. They kept asking her to just find out and tell them privately. They said they could keep it a secret from everyone else. They didn't understand that we didn't want to know either. They made it sound like we were being unnecessarily mysterious. The accusations got more personal. People started saying we didn't care about our baby because we weren't interested in knowing the gender. As if caring about your child is measured by how much information you gather before they're born. They made it sound like we were being neglectful parents already. Others said we didn't trust them. They took our decision as a personal attack on their trustworthiness. They couldn't understand that this wasn't about them at all. This was about what my wife and I wanted for our own experience. The worst accusation was that I was forcing my wife into this decision. Multiple people suggested that she must want to know, but I was stopping her. They painted me as some controlling husband who is denying my wife information about her own pregnancy. The truth is, she wanted this surprise as much as I did. Maybe even more. People started bringing up what others had done. My siblings had all found out the gender and shared it with everyone. My wife's cousins had done the same. They used these examples like they were rules we had to follow. Like every pregnancy had to be handled exactly the same way. The pressure was relentless. Every family gathering became an interrogation. Every phone call included questions about whether we'd changed our minds. Every text message about the baby came with hints that we should just find out and share the news. My wife started dreading family events. She'd get anxious before we visited anyone because she knew the questions were coming. She'd get tense when her phone rang because she knew someone might start pushing again. The stress was visible. She'd get this tight look around her eyes whenever someone brought up the baby's gender. I watched my wife get more and more upset after each conversation. She'd hang up the phone or leave a family dinner, and I could see how much their reactions were hurting her. She started avoiding certain people. She stopped answering calls from her sister altogether. The irony was that everyone claimed to be excited about the baby, but their excitement seemed to depend on getting this one piece of information. like they couldn't properly care about our child without knowing if it was a boy or a girl. My wife's nan was different. When we told her we wanted to wait, she just smiled and said that sounded wonderful. She said she'd done the same thing with one of her pregnancies, and it made the birth even more special. She was genuinely supportive of our choice. Some of my friends were fine with it too. They just congratulated us and asked how my wife was feeling. They seemed to understand that this was our decision to make and our experience to have. But these supportive voices were drowned out by all the criticism and pressure from our families. The people who were supposed to be most excited for us were the ones making this pregnancy more stressful. I realized we needed to protect ourselves and our growing family. We decided we weren't going to change our minds about finding out before my wife gives birth. We also decided to step back and not talk about the baby with anyone who gets upset over our choice. I will not have anyone make my wife anxious or stressed during her pregnancy. Not family members, not friends, not anyone. She needs peace and support right now, not pressure and criticism over a decision that should be ours alone to make. The baby is healthy, my wife is healthy. We're excited to meet our child and find out together in the delivery room if we're having a son or a daughter. That should be enough for everyone who claims to love us. My MIL is already showing huge red flags, and our babies aren't here yet. What should I do? My husband and I are expecting our first babies. We're having twins. And of course, both of our families are floored. For context, he is an only child, so this will be his parents' first grandbabies. My family is large, and my sister has kids, so my parents already have a bunch of grandchildren. My MIL has a lot of pros and cons. Pros, she can be very supportive and will always be there for us, her son. Cons, she's very assertive, has no filter, makes her own assumptions about everything, and is obsessed with my husband in a way that can be very off-putting at times. When we found out I was pregnant, we were super excited to tell everyone. When we told his parents, they were beyond excited, and his mom started crying and kept telling me, "Thank you, thank you." Okay, not that weird. She's just super excited to be a grandma. Then the red flags started happening. Me, my husband, and my parent-in-laws all have a group chat together. My MIL would send memes and pictures of twins and say Jason's kids or my babies. She would never say, "Aw, your future kids." She made a point to always exclude me, like I wasn't the one growing them. Next came the baby shower planning. We had a max of 50 people that we could allow at our venue. His mother would call repeatedly and say, "I'm inviting a couple of my girlfriends," and not even ask us if that was okay. After telling her we didn't know them, and we already hit our max amount of people. Luckily, my husband put her in her place and told her it wasn't her baby shower, and that she can't just invite random people. She got all butthurt and didn't talk to us for a couple days. Whatever, I didn't care. Then came her really weird comment about how she was going to raise my kids when I went back to work. She literally said she was going to quit her job and retire once I had the babies so she can take care of them. I thought she was joking. For context, I work in the healthcare field and plan on working only 2 days a week and plan on picking up the afternoon shift when my husband comes home from work, so we don't need her to watch our kids. Like at all. We never asked her, and for her to assume that I don't want to be home to take care of my children is insulting. Then came Christmas. During Christmas, my husband and I were at my parent-in-law's house, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this time next year, the babies will be here. I can't wait." And my mother-in-law goes, "Yes, we want to spend the night at your guy's house so we can be with him right when they wake up." Excuse me? What? Again, she's inserting herself into our lives without even asking. I don't want to wake up to my mother-in-law and father-in-law on Christmas morning. That is something I want to share with my husband and kids, and they'll only be 10 months old next Christmas, so it's not like my parents-in-law would be watching them open anything. I didn't say anything and just did a, "Ha." Next came the same comment again from my father-in-law about how my mother-in-law was going to quit her job. My father-in-law came over to help my husband with something and asked me when I was thinking about returning to work after the babies are born. I said, "I'm not sure. It depends on how my C-section goes and when I want to." Luckily with my job, I get the luxury of going back on my own terms. He said, "Oh, okay. I was just wondering because Mom is serious about quitting her job. I said, she doesn't need to do that. It's so insulting that she thinks she's going to parent my babies, and didn't even ask us if that was okay in the first place. Next came her weird comment right before our baby shower. She was showing me the stroller she got us, and I said, ugh, I can't wait until they're here. And she goes, oh my gosh, me too. I'm going to be the only one watching them. Mind you, I am very close to my family, especially my mother and sisters. She forgets I have my own family too, and would much rather be around them than her. But it didn't stop there. The pattern kept repeating. Every conversation somehow circled back to her role in these babies' lives. When we discussed nursery decorations, she'd chime in with what she thought was best. When I mentioned wanting to breastfeed, she had opinions about that too. She started buying duplicate items, claiming she needed them for when the baby stayed at her house. We never said anything about the baby staying at her house. At family gatherings, she'd announced to relatives that she was going to be the primary caregiver. She talked about her retirement plans like they were set in stone, like we'd already agreed to this arrangement that existed only in her head. But neither of us knew how to address it without causing a massive scene. The worst part was how she'd phrase everything. Not if you need help or when you're comfortable with it, but definitive statements about what was going to happen. She'd already decided how our lives were going to work once these babies arrived. She'd mapped out a future where she was essentially a third parent, and we were just the people who happened to conceive and birth her grandbabies. During one particularly uncomfortable dinner, she brought up sleep schedules and feeding times, explaining how she'd handle things when she was watching them. My husband finally spoke up and said, Mom, we haven't talked about childcare yet. She just waved him off and said, oh, honey, of course I'll be taking care of them. That's what grandmothers do. The entitlement was suffocating. Here I was, growing two human beings inside my body, planning for the biggest change of my life, and she was treating me like an incubator for her do-over babies. Every milestone, every first moment she could claim, she was already planning to claim. When people asked her about becoming a grandmother, she'd light up and talk about all the things she was going to do with her babies. She'd describe elaborate plans for activities, trips, traditions. But when they asked about what I was planning as the mother, she'd get this look like she'd forgotten I existed. The final straw was when she started talking about converting their spare bedroom into a nursery. Not for occasional visits or emergencies, but as a permanent setup, because the babies would be spending so much time there. She'd already picked out cribs and changing tables. She'd measured the room and planned the layout. My husband found out when his dad mentioned the measurements his mom had asked him to take. That's when we realized this wasn't just wishful thinking or excited grandmother syndrome. She was actively preparing to take over raising our children. She'd convinced herself, and apparently her husband, that this was the natural order of things. She'd never asked what we wanted. She'd never considered that we might want to raise our own babies. In her mind, her son's children were automatically hers to claim, and I was just the vessel that made it possible. The woman carrying these babies, planning their futures, dreaming about their lives, was somehow secondary to the grandmother who'd already decided their fate. I'm going to be the only one watching them. That sentence keeps playing in my head. Not helping, not supporting, not occasionally babysitting, the only one watching them. Like I'm going to hand over my newborn twins and disappear from their lives. Like being their mother is just a temporary inconvenience before grandma takes over. I feel like I'm not the main character in my own marriage. Throwaway account. I made this because I really need to vent, and I don't know if what I'm feeling is normal or if something is wrong with me. I'm 31 and have been married to my husband Kevin, who is 43 for 2.5 years. I'm currently pregnant with our first baby. Before me, he was married to his high school sweetheart, Vanessa. They have a 10-year-old daughter together, and honestly, they co-parent in the most healthy and pratic. I'm 31 and have been married to my husband Kevin, who is 43 for 2.5 years. I'm currently pregnant with our first baby. Before me, he was married to his high school sweetheart, Vanessa. They have a 10-year-old daughter together, and honestly, they co-parent in the most healthy and respectful way I've ever seen. Their story is complicated. They were happily married until Vanessa told him she was attracted to women. She suggested opening up their marriage so they could both explore that. They both dated other people, and eventually she met the woman who is now her wife and asked for a divorce. Despite all of that, they are still best friends. They talk often and have a very close bond. Kevin met me a few months after the divorce was finalized. I actually get along really well with both his daughter and Vanessa. She has always been kind to me, and I don't have any real issue with her as a person. She's not some evil stepmother situation. She's not trying to sabotage my marriage or compete with me. In fact, she's been nothing but welcoming since day one. When Kevin first introduced us, she smiled and said she was happy he found someone who made him laugh the way I do. When we got engaged, she texted me congratulations before she even called him. When we announced the pregnancy, she offered to help with anything we needed, and even suggested some baby names. But this is where I'm struggling, and I feel guilty even admitting it. They share the same group of friends. We spend time with them, including Vanessa and her wife, all the time. We go on trips together. We're around them constantly. Every weekend there's a barbecue or a birthday party or some gathering where we're all together like one big extended family. And every time people start talking about the past, it's always stories about Kevin and Vanessa. Their memories, their jokes, their life together. Someone will bring up the time Kevin and Vanessa got stuck in that elevator for 4 hours, and how they ended up having the best conversation of their marriage. Or how Vanessa convinced Kevin to go skydiving, even though he's terrified of heights. Or that Christmas when they accidentally gave each other the exact same book and laughed so hard they cried. Sometimes I sit there quietly and feel like I don't belong in my own marriage, like I walked into a life that was already built and I'm just trying to fit into it. It feels like I joined a show halfway through and everyone else already knows the story. They have inside jokes I'll never understand, references to things that happened years before I existed in Kevin's world. A shared language built over decades that I'm still learning to translate. He had so many years with her, 17 years of marriage, so many memories, milestones, experiences. They bought their first house together. They traveled to 12 different countries. They went through the struggle of trying to get pregnant, the joy of holding their daughter for the first time. They built careers side by side, supported each other through family deaths, celebrated promotions and achievements together. I know logically that he chose me, and that I have the future with him, especially now that we're having a baby. But emotionally, I feel like I'll never have that same place in his life. Like I'll always come after something bigger. Their relationship wasn't destroyed by betrayal or fighting or falling out of love. It just evolved into something different. The foundation is still there, solid as ever. I'm building on top of that foundation, not replacing it. When we're at dinner parties, Kevin will laugh at something Vanessa says with this genuine, easy comfort that comes from knowing someone your entire adult life. When their daughter has a problem at school, they handle it together with this seamless communication that doesn't require explanation. When Kevin's telling a story about his 20s or 30s, Vanessa is usually in it somewhere, filling in details he forgot, or correcting him when he gets dates wrong. I tried explaining this to him, but he doesn't really understand what I mean. I brought it up last month after we got home from another group dinner, where I spent 2 hours hearing stories about their college years and early marriage. I told him how I felt like an outsider looking in on his real life, how I sometimes wonder if I'm just the woman who happened to show up after his real-life partner moved on. He looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. He asked me if I expect him to cut Vanessa and his friends out of his life. I said no, because I know that's not fair, and I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the jealous second wife who demands her husband erase his past. I don't want to take his daughter's mother away or force him to choose between his history and his future. He said, I just have to accept that he has a past and focus on the future we're building. He reminded me that Vanessa is married to someone else now, that she's not interested in men anymore, that there's no threat to our marriage. He said he loves me and chose to build a life with me, and that should be enough. I get that. I really do. But it still hurts in a way I can't fully explain. It's not about jealousy in the traditional sense. It's not that I think he wants her back or that she's trying to steal him. It's more like being the second person to live in a house where everything was perfectly arranged by the previous owner. You can move your furniture in and hang your pictures on the walls, but you're still working within someone else's blueprint. Sometimes when Kevin talks about our future, about how excited he is for the baby, about the trips we'll take and the memories we'll make, I wonder if it feels different to him than it did the first time. Does holding my hand feel as significant when he held hers for 17 years? Will watching me become a mother be as magical when he already experienced that wonder with someone else? Are we creating something new together? Or am I just filling a role that was temporarily vacant? The pregnancy makes it more complicated. Our shared experience that belongs only to us. But Kevin has been through this before. He knows what to expect. He's calm when I'm panicking about labor because he's already coached someone through it. He picks out baby clothes with confidence because he's already done the first-time parent thing. Even this major milestone in our relationship feels like something he's repeating rather than experiencing fresh. I watch how naturally he and Vanessa navigate co-parenting and wonder if we'll ever have that kind of effortless partnership. They don't need to discuss or negotiate or work at understanding each other. They just know. They've been through enough together that they can communicate in shorthand. When their daughter is being difficult, one look between them says everything they need to say. I want that with him. I want to be the person who knows him so completely that we can have entire conversations without words. I want to be the one with decades of shared history, with stories that make everyone at the table laugh, with the kind of deep connection that survives even when the romantic relationship ends. But you can't fast forward through time. You can't skip to the part where you've built a lifetime together. So I'm asking if this is normal. Am I just being hormonal and insecure? Or is this something other people would struggle with too? Is it reasonable to feel like a supporting character in your own marriage when your husband's ex-wife is still such a central figure in his life? Or am I supposed to just be grateful that everyone gets along and stop wanting something I can't have? Because right now, growing his second child while watching him maintain this beautiful, unbreakable bond with the mother of his first, I feel more like an addition to his story than the co-author of our own. I wanted to thank everyone for their feedback about my decision to drop out of my best friend's wedding as her maid of honor. I dropped out of my best friend's wedding as her MOH. She asked, I agreed, but told her since I was a new stay-at-home mom I had financial troubles. This was fine at first, but ultimately ended with her expecting me to contribute $200 for an Airbnb after the wedding that I would not be staying in. It was pretty easy to come to the conclusion that she was the jerk here, but I have an update that really wasn't what any of us expected. A lot of people had a lot to say about our friendship dynamic. Yes, we do consider each other best friends, and no, we do not spend every waking moment together. People have lives, and just because we don't center ours around each other does not mean that we can't call each other that. There seems to be confusion on how I don't have any money, but know her from work. Well, let me break that down. I got pregnant, had a baby, and have been spending some time away from work to heal and bond with my child. I let a few days pass because ultimately Maggie really has been a great figure in my life and has never let me down once. I know that she has been under a lot of stress. I gave her some space and was hoping for an apology. Instead, I got Maggie showing up on my doorstep at 4 a.m, severely intoxicated, and looking like she just got attacked by a rabid raccoon. I was so shocked that I just let her in and didn't say anything at first. It was a bunch of small talk, like trying to figure out where she had been and what happened. I just told her I talked to her in the morning, and she ended up passing out on my couch. I woke up to banging on my door, and it turns out it was her fiancé. He ultimately was not angry, just scared, because apparently Maggie had taken off after dinner with his parents, and he hadn't been able to get in touch with her. At this point, all he had said was Maggie and his mother had gotten into an argument, but they left before giving me any details. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Maggie with an apology for showing up at my door, but still no apology for the Airbnb situation. I let it ride and just let her rant because she very obviously needed to. She went on about her future mother-in-law, let's call her Karen, was driving her mad, and she didn't even know if she wanted to go through with the wedding anymore because she couldn't handle it anymore. I asked her if she just wanted to come back over and talk it out. When she showed up at my door, she had a black eye, a scratch going almost all the way up her arm, and her nose was a little bruised. I felt horrible because I hadn't seen any of those things in the mess of her makeup and the dark. Her and Karen hadn't gotten into an argument. They had gotten into a full-blown bar brawl. Karen had been feeding the information to Maggie that it was the bridal party's responsibility to pay for everything, and she had canceled 4 of the couple's vendors because she refused to let them pay for them. This was the cherry on top after several other isolated incidents with her and the wedding. I don't really have all of the details about the fight because even Maggie says she was very intoxicated and wasn't sure how or what started it. But the picture became clearer as she started talking. Karen had been manipulating the wedding planning from the beginning. She convinced Maggie that bridesmaids traditionally cover all sorts of expenses that they absolutely don't. She told Maggie that good friends would want to contribute to the couple's post-wedding getaway. She made Maggie believe that asking for money was normal and expected. The vendor cancellations were the breaking point. Karen had called the florist, the photographer, the caterer, and the DJ. She told them the couple couldn't afford their services and canceled everything without permission. When the couple found out, they were devastated. They had saved for months to afford those vendors. They had put down deposits. Some of the vendors kept the deposits as cancellation fees. Maggie confronted Karen at dinner. Karen doubled down, insisting she was helping them save money and that the vendors were overpriced anyway. She said young couples these days had unrealistic expectations for weddings. She said when she got married, everything was simpler and cheaper. Karen started criticizing Maggie personally. She said Maggie was irresponsible with money. She said Maggie's friends were clearly not real friends if they wouldn't pay for wedding expenses. She said maybe her son was making a mistake, marrying someone so entitled. That's when Maggie lost it. She threw her drink in Karen's face. Karen retaliated by grabbing Maggie's hair and yanking hard. Maggie swung back and caught Karen in the shoulder. Other patrons tried to separate them, but both women were furious and kept going at each other. The bartender threatened to call the police. Karen's husband finally managed to pull her away while the fiancé grabbed Maggie. But the damage was done. Maggie was scratched up and bruised. Her dress was torn. She was humiliated and furious. Karen screamed that she never wanted to see Maggie again. She said the wedding was off as far as she was concerned. She said her son could choose between his family and this crazy woman. Then she stormed out of the restaurant. Maggie's fiancé tried to calm everyone down, but Maggie was beyond reasoning with. She felt betrayed by him for not defending her sooner. She felt stupid for letting Karen manipulate her into treating her friends badly. She felt overwhelmed by the whole situation and just wanted to disappear. So she left. She walked out of the restaurant and started drinking at bars around town. She called an ex-boyfriend and rambled about the wedding drama. She called her sister and cried about feeling trapped. She wandered around downtown, feeling sorry for herself and getting progressively more drunk. Eventually her phone died and she couldn't call anyone else. She couldn't remember where she parked her car. She was too drunk to drive anyway. The only address she could remember clearly was mine, so she caught a cab and showed up on my doorstep, looking like she'd been through a war. Her fiancé had been driving around town looking for her for hours. He checked every bar and restaurant he could think of. He called her friends and family. He was terrified something horrible had happened to her. When he finally tracked her phone to my neighborhood, he rushed over, hoping she was safe. The relief on his face when he saw she was okay was obvious, but he was also exhausted and frustrated. They both were. The wedding was supposed to be in 3 weeks, and everything was falling apart. The vendors were canceled. The mother-in-law was threatening to boycott. The maid of honor had dropped out. Maggie was questioning everything. When Maggie called me that afternoon, she sounded different, calmer, but also defeated. She apologized for the intrusion and the drama. She started explaining about Karen and the manipulation and the fight. As she talked, I could hear her processing everything that had happened. She realized that Karen had been sabotaging the wedding planning from the start. She realized that her requests for money from the bridal party had been unreasonable. She realized that she had let stress and outside pressure turn her into someone she didn't want to be. Maggie's reaction was of pure rage, not at me, but for her mother-in-law. She apologized for talking to me the way she did and for allowing Karen to sway her as much as she did. We ended up inviting her fiancé over, talking it all out, drinking a bottle of wine, and having a game night. It was good to hang out with her again, and yes, they have gone no contact with Karen.